It's hard to go into this with a completely positive tone when the first words I saw regarding that there was a new video was Robot Kids. Oh boy. Now, with that being my only knowledge of this theory, I will say there is one character, even if it doesn't really make sense right now, I could see being like there was misinformation in the first movie that we could backtrack on to make this plot point, which would be Mike being a robot. And let me explain this. I don't think this is true, but there is a route they could go because Mike is a really weird kind of character in terms of what he's an adaptation of in this movie. I feel like Mike is kind of like a merger of Silver Eyes Charlie with this kind of third original character with a bit of Mike from the games. He kind of ends up being a lot more like Mike towards the end, I would say, when he's kind of a lot more chill and happy with Abby. Uh, because like there's very few scenes like there's only a handful of scenes in the games where Mike isn't at least a little jokey in his dialogue, like because yeah, he the sister location monologue is very serious at a surface level, but then you notice stuff like he scoffs at the idea of being compared to William. uh and also this is like moments after he just became a reanimated corpse person, but then when you go to the logbook and his FNAF 4 appearances, he's a snarky bastard all the way through, with only a few moments where he like stops to be a bit more serious. So I wonder if Mike will kind of become that as the series goes on. Or Mike Schmidt, I should say, versus Mike Afton. And then, like I said, he has this kind of a lot more serious, like obsessive personality in the movie. That's kind of an original take on both of them. Uh, but what's there's one theory I could see that is an actual genuine. Because here's the thing, I don't like Robot Kids when it's Robot Kids for the sake of Robot Kids. When it's literally just like, yep, robots, because why not? I don't like that. That's why I don't like Gregbot, is it's not like a reference to the Silver Eyes plot line. It's just Gregory would be a robot for some unknown reason that I feel has been poorly covered. Like, there's not a story to Gregbot right now, really, or at least not one that feels rational and makes sense. But that's kind of a separate tangent. For Mike, I could see an angle of like, the reason he doesn't remember Freddy's is just like Charlie in Silver Eyes, he has amnesia from the time. So in Silver Eyes, Charlie has like kind of poorly fabricated glitchy memories because she is a robot recreating a kid who was killed. That's a very simple way to explain it, but just like understand it that way. Like it's a mixture of like, she wasn't alive for this, so of course she wouldn't remember it. But also, I think part of the idea is it might be intentionally tampered so she wouldn't realize she's a robot. I'm it kind of loose in my own head right now about like how that all works, but those are some examples of like that is a plot line. That point is regardless of how or why, Charlie does have amnesia related to Freddy's. And at first, it's kind of presented like PTSD, but then the kind of reveal is it might be related to the fact that she's a robot. Uh, and I could see that where what actually happened in Mike's past is he was Garrett. There is no Garrett. And he has a fabricated memory of Garrett being kidnapped to explain why there was a disappearance in the family, and he just doesn't really understand what happened when the disappearance was him. Or whatever. I could see that angle. Uh, and that's why he doesn't remember Freddy's at all, is because whoever made him, let's say Henry in this universe, didn't want him to remember who he was. Or maybe we're going the Silver Eyes route where he was also kidnapped and Garrett's out there somewhere else or whatever, like blah blah blah. Like I could see a theory like that. I wouldn't agree with it, but I could see that route because he already has Charlie connections to Silver Eyes. There's just a similar tone and vibe to their characters that cannot be ignored. Especially with like the whole like, being dragged back to Freddy's and dealing with William, who is kind of going under a pseudonym, looking for the mystery of his long lost younger brother, who is kidnapped and all that. Like, there's and having to deal with an aunt and all that. Like, especially since William I'm favoring the idea that Garrett's death wasn't random right now, because from what we know, there's not like, okay, even if I've debated whether or not the Nebraska thing is, I'm ranting a lot before this video, I'm very sorry, but I want to get my thoughts out before this, because I'm worried it's not going to be what I'd hoped. If he says anyone else is a robot, that becomes a problem. I'm debating whether or not Nebraska literally means he was in Nebraska in that incident, or if that's just a poster he found cheap that reminds him of the foresty thing. So it's not literally, like, he wasn't literally in Nebraska. He was in some forest picnic in Minnesota where the series, or the movie is set, I think, to our knowledge. So I wonder, like, I'm debating that, but, like, either way, whether he's at a picnic ground in Minnesota or Nebraska, William Afton drove out to who knows where to, I don't know, either it was just an opportunity he had where he's like, oh, I just happened to be also picnicking in this area and saw a kid to take, or he has some reason to hate the Schmidts or want revenge on the Schmidts and just, like, took Garrett as an opportunity. Which, if the Schmidts are going to be Henry likes in this universe, could totally make sense. But those are just, like, early thoughts before this. Let's go into it.
The show that knows that a picture is worth 1,000 words.
The drawings show them what really happened.
And what did you draw? A yellow rabbit hitting the subscribe button?
We can see you now.
Well, great! That is the point of the subscribe button, after all. Thanks, Abby. Finally it's happened. After 8 agonizingly long years in development hell, hopping from studio to studio, director to director, the Five Nights at Freddy's movie is finally out for you to go see right now. And man, has this been a commercial hit. As of the writing of this script, just one weekend into release, the movie's made over $152 million at the box office. More than 7 times its own budget. And that's despite being available to stream on Peacock, where, oh wait, it's also the most viewed movie on Peacock ever. Suck on that, my big fat Greek wedding 3. It's also Blumhouse's most successful opening weekend to date, which means that...
I mean, there's not much I can say here, you know? He's just describing what happened in the movie. I can't.
More people are turning out to see Springtrap wielding his knife than Michael Myers. Maybe now Hollywood will finally bother to get the name of this thing right.
And his other movie, Friday Nights at Freddy's, comes to theaters and streaming on Peacock October 27th.
Five Nights at Freddy's.
What did I say?
Friday nights. It's been 8 or 9 years since I first met Scott Cawthorn, who created this.
Why do we get it wrong?
Nights.
Or not. Who cares? Forget them. This thing was made for the fans. From Sparky the Dog to Dream Theory to...
It's just a theory.
You bet it is, and today we're getting back to those theorist roots. Today
Okay, here's the other thing that I could totally see making the Mike theory connection is there's a weird amount of wrong things that make it its way into the movie, if that makes sense. Like, Dream Theory, largely dismissed by the community. Technically, it's a really prevalent concept in this movie. Sparky the Dog, a hoax character that's very prevalent in the movie. Or not very prevalent, he's an Easter egg. Phone Guy is Purple Guy is canon to the movie, technically, because Steve Raglan is the guy over the phone who instructs Mike in this universe. You could also kind of argue some theories, like, if you look at the tape Mike puts in, you can barely see the tape had the text before it, TZ at the very end, which would spell out Fritz, or at least most names. If it's a name as long as Mike's or comparable in length, that you could see that they would be written in a similar font size and all that, it would be Fritz for that name length ending with TZ, which implies the guard before Mike is named Fritz, which would imply Fritz is not Mike, which is another theory that's kind of debated or whatever. So it's like there's a lot of questionable theories that seem to be in the movie, and then there's other ones like Will stuff you could make, like if we're going the things in the movie are things wrong in the games, if that makes sense, route. And Mike-Bot could totally be one of those. Is actually one of those. Like, if the idea is this is like the collection of all theories that don't make sense in the game verse, but would be fine if in their own world where they were meant to be that from scratch.
Theorizing about the actual movie, and boy, is there a lot to talk about here. True story, after the movie, I basically locked myself in the room with Lee and Tom, the film and game theory creative directors, and we busted out our trusty whiteboard to figure out exactly what was going on in the movie and where the story was gonna head in the future, because there were just a lot of details left hanging. What was up with the Balloon Boy figurine? How's no one freaked out by the fact that there are bodies in those animatronics? Wasn't this like the most structurally unsound table for it of all time? That last one, perhaps, the biggest mystery of them all. Today, we're gonna be looking at all the Easter eggs, secrets, and hidden lore from the movie, then comparing those to other parts of the franchise, both the books and the games, in order to predict where the story of the FNAF 2 movie is gonna go years before they actually make it. So that's our
I mean, to be honest, if they really do have the script done for FNAF Movie 2 and they're just tweaking it to be a bit more easy to digest for non-fans, which is how people were taught. Like there was a kind of post about like how the FNAF Movie 2 script was basically set. It just had to be like, they were just like, okay, this is what people didn't like in the first movie, we'll workshop it a bit so it doesn't happen again in the second movie. I've thought about doing my own video of my own pitch for FNAF Movie 2. That would be very weird and kind of surreal. But whatever, that's regardless. But so I'm not sure how many years it will be, but I mean, I guess anything over 2 would
today,
be
but before we get
years.
to it, I also have to shout out our brand new line of official.
Yeah, the merch is cool.
Guys, also a lot of just FNAF stuff, patches, oh, in case you were so tight, and t-shirts feature subtle, the all-over prints of everyone's top skirt jackets, the FNAF patches of all your that's falling tailing. It is nice sport Monty jacket studs in this one. If any collection point out that we already do have some vague idea where the sequel's gonna head. In an interview with Variety, FNAF director Emma Tammy explained that the first movie was tied to the first game, so a second film would likely tie into a second game. Which, kinda goes without saying, but also should probably make our lives easy, right? Yeah, not quite. As we mentioned in our first prediction theory, the strategy for the movieverse seems to be taking iconic bits and pieces from across the entire franchise, games, books, fan theories, even hoaxes, and distilling it all down into the most recognizable version of FNAF there is. That's how we got Mike Schmidt from FNAF 1 hanging out with Vanessa from Security Breach, fighting Springtrap.
There is a thing Rytos brought up that's an interesting point, which is Vanessa's name actually Vanessa? Because Williams goes completely fake name, Steve Raglan, first name, last name, both different. And she goes by Vanessa Shelley in the movie, so it is possible, like, she could be Elizabeth in this timeline or whatever. And just going by the fake name Vanessa or whatever. I just thought I'd throw that in there because it's like, to say this is one-to-one Vanessa from Security Breach is already a bit like weird, but I do think the name is a reference to Security Breach at least. Oh, also Vanessa being Elizabeth is another kind of like hotly debated theory that's in this movie, whether it's right or wrong.
FNAF 3 and saving Abby from getting stuck into a Springlock version of Ella from the Silver Eyes novel, with an ending that was ripped straight out of the fourth closet. It is literally FNAF the smoothie. Everything dumped into a blender, chopped up, and then poured back out onto the big screen. So yeah, while it did follow the same broad strokes as the first game, Five Nights in the FNAF 1 pizzeria with ghost kids in suits, it is definitely not the same story. It's also important to note the changes to the story that have been added in. One example has to be the time that these movies take place. It's widely accepted that the FNAF 1 video game takes place somewhere around 1993, and yet in this scene from the movie, we see a date on a security camera that reads April 6th, 2000, about 7 years later. Another big example, though we've long theorized that the story of the original FNAF games takes place in Utah, that is not the case in the film. In the film, during the scene where Aunt Jane
I think Utah flag? Hold on. Like my brain
takes place in Utah, that is not the
That's the okay. I just didn't know that's what the flag looked like. It's actually not that bad looking.
case in the film. In the film, during the scene where Aunt Jane is confronting Mike at Abby's school, her lawyer hands Mike some family court paperwork. If you pause and read the fine print on the documents, you'll find the URL mncourts.gov, which is the official website for the Minnesota judicial system. Additionally, we can see a phone number with the area code 651, which is connected to the St. Paul area and eastern suburbs of Minnesota. And get this, I kid you not, there's a small town in this area code named Afton. You cannot make that up. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Scott moved the entire movie to Minnesota just for that change alone. Lastly, there's also this decal on Vanessa's police cruiser, GFPD. PD stands for Police Department. That part's pretty darn obvious, but then what about the GF? Well, honestly, that could stand for any city or township with those same initials, from Grand Forks to Glen Falls to Great Falls, but included in that list is Granite Falls, just 2 hours west of St. Paul, whose cop cars, at least according to the website, follow the exact same black and white color pattern that we see in the movie. Speaking of clues from the cars that are
that's not really... I mean, most cop cars look like this, so that's not really super special, but sure.
seen throughout the movie, we can also reasonably assume that Mike's brother Garrett was kidnapped in the early 80s, based on this shot from Mike's dream sequence. By taking the rear end of William Afton's car here and reverse image searching for it, we're able to identify this as a Ford Fairmont Futura. Specifically, the model is coming from between 1980 and 1983. You can immediately see the connections here between the unique vertical taillight design and the boxy body shape. But why then?
I mean, a lot of cars look like that, but sure.
Does that matter? Well, Mike's brother Garrett is likely the first child that Afton abducted and killed. In Mike's dream flashbacks, we very clearly see Garrett holding a toy airplane as he's being taken away in the back of Afton's car. And where do we see that airplane again? When Vanessa reveals Afton to be her father. She's
I mean, I can't say much here, because it's like, yeah, Garrett could be. We don't really know. Like, I don't have a lot to say and add to this.
holding the same airplane. That right there.
Yeah, I know.
That is cold. Gifting toys from your victims to your daughter. But not only is it gross, it's also helpful because it lets us put together a rough timeline. You see, Afton and Vanessa are clearly in a still operational pizzeria in this photograph, which means it had to have been taken before the other kids went missing, causing...
That's a fair point, yeah. If she has Garrett's plane and he's still Spring Bonnie in the functional pizzeria and the pizzeria closes because of the MCI, yeah, okay, fair enough. I mean, it's something I kind of subconsciously was thinking about, but it's nice when people say something because sometimes it brings something that's kind of in your head like to the forefront and why you would think it.
Freddy's to shut down. In other words, Garrett was the first of Afton's,
or at least an early one. He's before MCI.
Victims that we currently know of. And that right there, that's important, because in the games, Afton's first victim, and the one most closely associated with his car, goes on to possess the Puppet, a marionette-esque character that serves as a protector and guide to all the other spirit children. It's the first victim that gives gifts and gives life to the other animatronics.
Okay, can I just say, can Mike, can Matt make up his mind on whether he believes Will stuff or not? Because now he's saying puppet stuff, but I swear a video not too long ago had him saying William would stuff the kids.
After their murders. We see this possession happening in FNAF 6's security puppet minigame. Notice the tire tracks out there in the rain. We see the exact same event from a different angle in FNAF 2. Notice that cool purple...
Yeah, I don't disagree. That's... There are a lot of points to Garrett being the puppet, but I've been really on... There's a script I've been tinkering with. And it's getting it quite right and getting, like, making it a true video is kind of what I'm like. Because there's just, like, right, sometimes you have ideas and they're just kind of word vomit, if that makes sense. And organizing them into an actual, like, what am I trying to say here with this word vomit is what's going on with a video on Garrett being the puppet. Because I don't doubt it completely. It's more that I'm trying to figure out, so what? If that makes sense. Because it's like, it's very easy to be hyped about stuff like this. Like, oh, Garrett's the puppet. Wow! Puppet's going to be in for that movie too! But why? And what are we doing with that? Because the only... Since the puppet's not in FNAF Movie 1, it implies the puppet... Like, where is Garrett then? Like, if he's the puppet, where was he during this time? And also, if William really did stuff the kids in the movieverse, like he says, or like Vanessa says, then what is the puppet's role in all of this? If he's not sticking around to protect the kids in FNAF Movie 1, and he's not the one who brought them to life, what's he doing in this time, and where is he? Like, where is the puppet right now? That's the big question. I think I genuinely wonder if movie 2 is not about, oh, we found the puppet, now what? Or I think it's going to be the story of trying to find the puppet. Like, we're going to go through all of movie 2 trying to get down the puppet, and then movie 3 will be, okay, we have the puppet, we've reunited with Garrett, now we have to do Happiest Day. That's the only way I can see it working, because if we get the puppet, I feel like we're doing Happiest Day, because that's the only thing the puppet does, other than potentially stuffing the kids and protecting the kids. If he's not doing either, then I don't know what the puppet does in the story. And if we get the puppet too soon, it's like, okay, let's say we find the puppet, why wouldn't he just do Happiest Day? Like, how are we going to stall for an entire other movie to not get to the ending? Which is why I'm like, maybe all of movie 2 will be getting to the puppet, and then movie 3 will be like a kind of like almost like a two-parter in a way. Like movie 2 is just like all about the setup for movie 3. Or maybe it'll be the Back to the Future situation where they're like kind of filmed and made simultaneously for one to directly go into the other like really quickly. But it's like Garrett being the puppet is like something I'm like, there's a good amount of stuff going to it. It makes a decent amount of sense, especially storytelling wise. But what are we doing with it? It's also because the puppet's a weirdly niche character in lore application. Like, Charlie as the puppet is a game-only concept. In fact, the puppet in general is a kind of game-only concept. Like, I mean, it is in Frights, but that's almost more like a cameo MacGuffin role, you know? It's like, it'd be like saying, like, oh, the Chaos Emeralds are in all media, but it's like, if that makes sense, like, oh, I mean, yeah, they're there, but they're not a character for the most part. Like, there's no, like, lore, like, the puppet that's in Fright is just a plot device in practice, for the most part. We don't get any characterization of that puppet mask. And there's no puppet at all in Silver Eyes, and there isn't really a puppet like, there wasn't a time, to my knowledge, where the puppet appeared in Tales, unless I missed a story or something like that. Because, admittedly, there are some stories that I genuinely consider unimportant that I didn't read in Tales, but no, keep that between you and me. You, however many, over 1,000 people see this.
From there, the rest of FNAF 2's hidden minigames then show us the puppet trying to protect the other dead children from Afton. And when it can't, the puppet decides to bring them to life in the form of animatronics.
I mean, I do agree with that sentiment. That's just a weird way to explain it.
The robotic voice here is spelling out "save them." Does it sound familiar? It should. That same robotic voice appears at the very end of the
I mean,
movie's
that's another one. Like,
credits.
there are many things. It's not only does Garrett have kind of a Sammy vibe to his character in Connection, but he also kind of plays like he is the kidnapped kid who seems to be early on the timeline. And he does seem, and there is like the "come find me," which feels like a younger brother like asking like, hey, come, still keep looking at me, please find me. And it does, and FNAF 2 is the introduction of the puppet game, and it is the FNAF 2 dialogue thing, and there is the Easter egg of the puppet being on the the text puppet being on the chalkboard. And it does just feel natural to progress that way. And then it's also like the whole car motif connection. It is there. I'm like, why? What are we doing with it?
It's C-O-M-E-F-I-N-E-M-E.
Once the whole thing wraps, the voice has spelled out "come find me" in the exact same way that the puppet communicated to the player in the FNAF 2 minigames.
I mean, it's not the puppet, it's the narrator, because it says "save him" in the Give Cake minigame, which implies either that's Freddy's AI or just the omnipotent narrator telling the player kind of that.
Who needs to be found in the movie? Garrett. See, the fact that they never resolved what exactly happened to Garrett was a big thing that stuck.
They did solve it, though. They said William killed him. I know that's not solve. I'm just saying, like, it's not like they never addressed it.
Out to me when I was watching this thing. After all, it was Mike's entire motivation and his only clear outright connection to both Afton and Vanessa. His fate is definitely going to come up again in the sequel, and all the signs are pointing to the puppet from the FNAF 2 video game. What's more, did you notice the music that was playing during that section?
Yeah, it's also the
Music
FNAF 2
box.
music there.
Another nod to the puppet, who in the games is kept calm by constantly winding a
It's
music
the same song, too. It's the same music box thing.
box. In short, Garrett is possessing the puppet in this world, and here he is literally trying to tell Mike and the audience to come find him in the sequel. But stop for a minute and consider the method of Afton's crime here. It is different from all the rest. He's out in nature. He kidnaps Garrett and presumably leaves him alive longer than his normal victims. He keeps the kid's toy and then gives it to his daughter. They're even in a completely different state. Unlike the rest of Afton's crimes, where he just lures kids to the back of the pizzeria and kills them, here things feel premeditated. They feel personal. And that would align with both the games and the books, where Afton...
And this is the other thing I agree with. It's very arbitrary for him to kill Garrett for no reason. I'm worried where this goes off the rails, and I really hope I was tipped off
His
wrong.
first murder isn't just a random killing, it's targeted against one person, his business partner and the original
And here we
builder
go.
behind the
Henry Schmidt. Woo! I should have had a bingo card of what I thought was going to
Thomas
happen.
Henry.
Small souls trapped in prisons
This-
of my making, now set to new
I don't
prisons
disagree with it.
first inflicted on me, but then one that I let bleed out to cause all of this.
In fact, in the novel trilogy, Afton does the exact same thing that he does in the movie. He kidnaps Henry's daughter Charlie before ultimately killing her. Basically, all signs point to Garrett not just being a random victim, but rather to him being the son of Afton's partner in
And here's probably where we transition to RoboKids, but okay.
rival Henry, the man who helped Afton build all of the animatronics. See, as I was piecing together the details from the movie, I started to notice something. The Afton and Schmidt families from the movie seem awfully close to the family structures from the games, except in reverse. You see, in the game series, we know that Afton has himself 3 children, Michael, Crying Child, and Elizabeth. The oldest son, Mike,
I mean, they're identical to the family structure of the novels, though. William has 1 daughter, and the Schmidts have 3 kids. I mean, okay, yeah, I guess that's. Okay, I can see this one a little bit more. It's like William keeps his family from the novels, but Henry absorbs the Afton family from the games.
Michael plays a prank as a kid, which gets his younger brother killed in the iconic
In terms
fight
of 2 boys, 1 girl, the actual functionality of the story is a lot closer to Silver Eyes. The Henry, the Emily family, and the actual family structure of how the story plays out is a lot more like the Emily family in the novels, though.
From there on, Mike becomes obsessed with atoning for his mistake, eventually becoming a security guard and releasing the spirit of his brother into the afterlife. Then there's
When? What the fuck? Okay, here's the thing. While I agree that the bite victim does move on, in fact, that's the entire idea of Castermind. Or not the entire, but that's a prominent idea in Castermind. One of my favorite videos I've done lately. This has never been a game theory, though. Like, when the fuck did he talk about that? Actually, yeah, it's this one. Cassie is the spirit behind everything, but I've nicknamed it Castermind. That's like, this is, that's never, when the fuck has that been a game theory, that he frees the bite victim, like personally himself? You can't just, this has happened a few times where Matt will say something like that, and it's like, when the fuck has this ever been talked about? That wasn't even in the timeline, like the ultimate game theory timeline. Huh? I'm sorry, that was like a flashbang. For like, once again, it wouldn't be a big deal if Matt had talked about this, but I've never heard him deposit this idea that Mike personally set the bite victim free, or did something like that. Like, you could argue that's his motivation, that he wants to do that he wants to atone for what happened to the bite victim, he wants to free him. But, like, does he ever do that himself personally in game theory's history?
Elizabeth, who eventually
Hell, I don't even in Castermind he doesn't do that. And I know that's my personal theory, so I shouldn't be expecting like to fall or not. Too many M names in FNAF right now, because you have 2 different mics and you have MatPat. Because it's like I'm not. Obviously, MatPat doesn't know my channel exists. In fact, it's actually funny how little MatPat knows my channel exists, because he's like referenced other YouTubers that are like the exact same size as my channel in terms of like subscriber count and view count, which is what makes it funny that he doesn't know I exist. So like he's not going to be beholden to my logic, obviously. That's my personal take on things. Of course, it's not going to be over there. But it's like, even in his logic, I don't know if that's ever been a concept. So the fact that he just drops that so casually, like that's a fact that's always been true, is like really weird and kind of caught me off guard.
gets trapped and dies inside a baby, a suit that is increasingly looking to be a Springlock animatronic. Now let's
Not really. FNAF thinks that. It's not like there's more evidence for that. That's just a theory FNAF thinks that game theory latched onto, even though it's like nothing new has really added to that idea I would say it in a significant way, where it's like, oh, it's increasingly looking like this is the case. Like, it wasn't like that in the novels, and it wasn't really like that in the games as it was presented in Sister Location.
Check out the Schmidt family over in the movie.
I guess there's the Jester costume in Tales, but that doesn't have to be Baby. Eh.
You have, again, a family of 3, 2 boys and a girl. Mike, the older brother, is a security guard who's obsessed with atoning for the
And this is where I say, like, he is kind of borrowing from Mike Afton, but I feel like he's a bit of a different character right now.
time that he got his younger brother Garrett.
Like, Mike Schmidt is the ultimate example of, like, to me, when characterization is important when considering characters. Because, yes, it's very easy to look at security guard named Mike and the oldest brother and be like, huh, Mike Afton. But Mike Afton isn't just older brother security guard. He has the narrative context of Mike Afton. The whole idea of the bite, that is crucial to his origin story. And then you have his snarky sense of humor that's prevalent throughout the logbook and also his FNAF 4 appearances. And then you have the fact that he's experienced the nightmares before at some point in some context. And then you have, like, the entire context of his dad being the fucking serial killer. Hell, in terms of actual personality and characterization, Vanessa is closer to Mike in games in many ways.
Kidnapped and killed. Then there's Abby, who's nearly trapped and killed inside the Ella suit, a spring-lock animatronic. They literally match 1 for 1. Meanwhile,
Not 1 for 1. That's kind of pushing it.
Afton in the movie seems to have himself only 1 daughter, Vanessa, just like Henry had himself 1 daughter, Charlie, in the game.
That's cheating a little bit, because he only has 1 daughter in the novels. Because Henry also had Sammy with a question mark. Yeah, I feel like we're cheating a little bit here. Like, that's not a... You can't just be like, oh, this is the only way this family structure has ever worked. I mean, you even acknowledge yourself the connections to the Silver Eyes series. So it's like, that's important context.
Games. So, if they've switched dynamics, that could make Mike's dad here the representative of Henry Emily from the games.
Her mom died a little while back, and Dad, he couldn't handle it, so...
They leave Mike's dad's fate vague. To me, looks like it was deliberately done in case they ever wanted to bring Mike's dad back into the story in a role
I don't disagree with that. I just don't agree with how we got that conclusion for this last little bit.
similar to Henry's. But perhaps most interesting of all, if you look in the background of the employee training video, you can see a man who looks very similar to Mike's dad working.
Maybe. He's clean shaven. I mean, if this is the same time period as this, roughly, maybe a little earlier. Maybe this one could be a little earlier, depending on when this tape was recorded and how old Freddy's is. But this guy looks younger to me, and also, yeah, I'm not sold on that one.
Working on the
That maybe they could pull a spot and say like, oh, this was the same guy the whole time, even though they didn't really look the same.
Done in the game's canon.
Epidemic Sound have a
God damn it! I hate that ad blocker doesn't work on this. I have to find a new ad blocker for
mood, genre, duration.
This is also, as far as I can tell, an uncredited performance, but one look at Mike's dad, this guy from the training video, and the way that Henry's portrayed in places like the Character Encyclopedia,
No, I don't doubt this to this. I see this like these two being connected. I don't see the this to this. Like, this is actually eerily spot on design-wise to this one. This is actually like a pretty good connection. This is kind of pulling a little bit out of your ass here, Matt.
Shows a visual design connection between the 3 of them. But not only would this connection fit with the established game lore, it would also explain why William Afton recognizes Mike. Early in the movie, we see
this is actually, I think, the best evidence for the Mike for the Henry Schmidt theories. The fact that it's the last name Schmidt that gets him to be like, huh. Because you would think if it was a spontaneous kill that wasn't premeditated, you wouldn't be thinking about the last name as much as the faces, you know? The fact that the name is like what triggers it is like, okay, either he just has an obsession with the names of his victims, or he was specifically looking for the Schmidts and didn't care about anyone other than killing one of them at random.
Have a moment of recognition when he reads Mike.
maybe to get back at Henry Schmidt with a question mark.
Last name.
Mr. Michael.
But according to U.S. Census data, there's around 166,000 people with the last name Schmidt here in the U.S. So either this is just a case of pure movie coincidence, or William recognizes not only the last name Schmidt, but Mike Schmidt specifically in the general age range that his partner's son would be. That's why he's so sure that this is someone from his past. More evidence for this? The fact that William knows that Mike has a brother without it ever being addressed.
This is perfect. First I killed your brother, now I killed you.
Sure, we can assume the spirit children told him.
Little ones tell me you have a sister.
Or maybe Vanessa, but that's a bit less satisfying than him just knowing and taking out his vendetta against every member of the Schmidt family. And for those of you...
Okay, this is a bit of a weird argument. So, I mean, it's movie logic. You know, like, recognize the last name Schmidt and be like, wait, Mike Schmidt? Does he kind of look like... Oh, yeah, it looks like that kid I killed. I think that's all there is to it. And if he does know Henry, then it's like, hey, he looks like the spitting image of Henry. Or Henry with a question mark. I don't really get that little rant, but okay.
Saying that Henry's last name is Emily, it might be, but that's never actually been officially confirmed. We've always thought it was a bit bizarre to have as a last name, and let's be honest, it could just as easily be Charlie's middle name, Charlotte Emily Schmidt. But last, let's talk about...
I mean, I feel like the last name could just be different.
William. You'll notice that I just pulled the line that indicates that the spirits talk to William throughout this movie, which is a very important detail. In fact, if you notice, they really gave Afton a lot of explicit control over what the spirits are doing here. See, while he seems to understand what was happening in the games, it never seemed like he could outright control the animatronics.
Oh, it's deliberately contradicted. Like, if William had the ability to control the animatronics, FNAF 3's Follow Me sequences wouldn't happen. Because, like, it's not like anyone steps in to break the control there, unless you argue the vengeful kid does. But he doesn't do that in the movie, so that's another, like, that would have to be a change in mechanics if that was how that worked.
Books, it's a little bit different. He eventually is able to control the animatronics, but not until the last novel of the trilogy. Here, though, he seems to understand all of it from the get-go. They tell him about Abby. He understands the importance of the pictures on the wall.
What have you done?
And as the spring locks in his suit are going off and he's dying, what does he do? He basically looks directly in the camera, says his catchphrase,
I always come back.
and puts
He
on
doesn't
the
look in the
Springtrap
camera.
helmet. Why? What sense would that make? Well, it's a pretty clear indication that this Afton explicitly knows how possession works, and it involves being...
I mean, all three Aftons kind of do. I mean, Game Afton at that point in time, when he would become spring-locked, knows how that works. I mean, he's done it. He's seen it happen, or done it, depending on Will stuff versus Puppet stuff. Or done it in the case of my latest video I'm working on, which is... I'm actually kind of tinkering with the name a little bit. I think I'm just going to go with Why Afton Made Baby is going to be the name of it. But that kind of talks about William's character arc of learning about possession and understanding it. And then Silver Eyes William either figured it out right after killing the kids or really quickly after. So that's not... We're getting some weird call-outs for, like, this is different between this, but it's not really.
Completely put inside of the suit like this. Putting on that helmet is basically Afton accepting his fate, knowing that...
Yeah, I do agree with this. I do think he intentionally is like, well, if I'm going to die, I'm going to give myself the best chance of coming back.
He'll be back, able to possess the suit and survive. So right here we have ourselves a smarter Afton who is years further in his understanding of the spiritual world.
Is he smarter, though? Or is he just in a situation where he only has one option?
Than either the
Like, either he dies there or he comes back as Springtrap. And I feel like kind of any of the Williams would take be Springtrap over dying.
in the games or the books, which leads me to this, an animatronic buried in the parts and service room of the pizzeria. One that you can't see in the movie, but you can see in the behind-the-scenes footage from Dawko during his tour of the movie set. An animatronic with rounded human skull, silver eyes, and human teeth. While this could just be background set dressing, I don't think that's the case. If this is truly an Afton who understands the power of agony in granting eternal life, if this is an Afton who has gone so far as to build a...
You're not going to Robot Kids, because I feel like the easier out for that is that's an early model of Springtrap.
Freddy torture chair for extracting remnant from his victims.
Matt, you can't just keep dropping that. You haven't talked about that in this theory. What the fuck? Did he talk about that? But he didn't even write the other script. The first. Hold on. Yeah, this one. He confessed in this video that he didn't write this video. And this one's kind of more like a, hey, I was in this. Here's kind of my experience. So, did he mention the idea of remnant extraction in this video?
I'm thinking his experiments with building passable robotic humans has already begun. This isn't just me playing the Robot Gregory game again. It is the only explanation for the part.
It is not the only explanation. That's just fucking lying. Or maybe not lying, but exaggerating the truth extremely. This could be an early model for Springtrap. This could be, hell, there are animatronics in the real world that do look like this. And I'm pretty sure they're not trying to make hyper-realistic robot humans for every single one of those, you know?
Parts and services room to have an animatronic with human teeth and realistic human head proportions and eyes. And
it's probably for Springtrap, Matt.
above it, hanging from the top of the shop, a robotic hand with 5 fully articulating fingers.
Springtrap! Did Matt forget FNAF 3 exists?
And human proportions. No other animatronic in this series fits this sort of description. Does this mean he's already built a humanoid, or is this just an early phase of his experiments? It's unclear.
You can't... Did Matt genuinely forget Springtrap exists? Like, they're clearly thinking about movie 2, considering that they already have the damage done to Spring Bonnie. That kind of is like a precursor to Springtrap's damage. So I'm pretty sure that's going to be stuff they use for whenever we see the gory body of Springtrap in movie 2.
But it does give a bit more credit to Vanessa's bloodless stab wound at the end of the movie being more than just an excuse to get itself a PG-13 rating. My real guess, though, is that there's a robot Garrett walking around.
Oh, no.
And that he'll be the reveal at the end of the movie, just like Charlie the puppet is revealed to be a robot at the end of the 4th closet.
That's not the reveal in 4th Closet. Like, it kind of is, but not. What is with... This is... People talk about, like, the MatPat cycle. This is a separate cycle, which is MatPat throwing out the most batshit weird ideas in the last 30 seconds without any buildup or explanation. Like, yes, Charlie is a robot in Silver Eyes. But she's not the puppet in that universe. There is no puppet in that universe, to our knowledge. So you can't just be like, oh, missing kid, gotta become the puppet. And the robot also. Like, is he the puppet or not? Because now you're saying he's going to be a robot. But this entire middle half you were saying he was going to be a puppet. Which fucking is it? And the Vanessa stab wound, I think it's just because it's a fucking fresh stab wound, you know? Like, you've never seen, like, when stylization where, like, you stab something and then, like, the blood curls and, like expands and leaks over things? Because... we don't get to see the knife really taken out. Like, maybe with Vanessa, I actually could see that storyline where she's going to be Vanessa, like what Elizabeth is in 4th Closet. If you want to go that route for theorizing, that's a bit better of an argument. And that's why he's so willing to kill her is, I mean, she does die via stab wound in Silver Eyes. It's a bit different in that context, but it does still happen. So it could be like why would a human medical equipment work on her? Or be applied to her? Like, you wouldn't think, oh, we brought her to the hospital, fuck, we realized via this stab wound as we're trying to treat her that she's a robot. He didn't even go the route that makes sense. Like, if you cut this last 30 seconds, this is a very solid theory. This is like a pretty solid video. I don't actually disagree with a lot of this. I think just some of the points are a little weird. Like, this is a pretty good one. It's this last, like, 20 seconds, like, what the fuck happened? Did MatPat forget his own video? What happened here?
A world-shattering revelation for Mike as he comes to terms with the nature of his brother and his father's weird creations before the final movie
Why wouldn't it just be that he's the puppet, like you said earlier in the video?
where he's tasked with having to burn it all down. Honestly, the pieces are in place for us. Or not.
What the fuck? Is that... What was the entire thing about him being the puppet for, then? Is it just to say he's going to be the Charlie of this universe? Because you can't have your cake and eat it. You can't say he matches the plot line of Game Charlie, therefore he's going to follow Novel Charlie, who is a very different character's arc. And just be like, no problems with these connections here. That kind of is upsetting. For, like, what this video is, because it's like, you were so close, and then you just said weird shit at the end, based on an unused prop in the movie that's probably just early plans for Springtrap. Hell, do we see Afton in the suit, in his... This might be used, actually. Is this the prop used in the final scenes where Afton's reaching out and twitching, or was meant to be used? Because there's the post-credits... Is that on YouTube right now? No, I want credits. I really hope this clip exists. Nah, it doesn't look like it. It's here. Yeah, dang. There's the scene where he's, like, twitching a little bit as Blonde Boy stares at him. I wonder if this prop was used for that. I'd have to rewatch it myself. I don't want to say that without being like, But I do wonder if that's an early test model for Springtrap's design. For movie 2. Because think about what's visible in Springtrap. You can see a bit of his teeth, you can see his eyes, and you can see bits of his hand and stuff in some scenes. And you can see, like, the organs and stuff. So I could see that being, like, an early test model, or the model used for that scene in particular. Or the animatronic, I should say, used for that scene in particular, depending on how it's done and all that. If it's Matthew Lillard in the suit there or not. That's kind of my overall thoughts. Anything
All the next movie has to do is drop a Markiplier cameo and then show me a clip of Mangle, and I'm in. But
honestly, Mangle is my most wanted feature of movie 2. Like, I say as I look up to my Funtime Foxy figurine and my Mangle and my U2's Mangle plush. It's like, if you ever read my Freddy and Friends newspaper comic, it should be no surprise that Mangle is my favorite character in the series. So that I agree, that would totally be like all I need.
Hey, one last reminder to check out our incredible officially licensed FNAF merch. Grab them while they...
This must have been... I'm trying to figure out whether or not the whole, like, the math... It's actually this scene... Oh, no, it's not.
Back, able to possess the suit and survive. So...
Oh, actually, would it be Vengeful Spirit? No. Come on, someone has to have... I don't want the... Oh, it's actually... God damn it.
It's time for early holiday shopping.
Shut up, Fred Meyer.
Shop great deals all month gift size matters. Bigger.
Like I said, I after the ad block, it's this one. That is a lot more metally sounding. And that is... I do wonder if that's what's going on. Anyway, I do wonder if that's where that animatronic was used. Because I mean, they made it for a reason, and if MatPat's genuinely claiming this is for Robot Kids for movie 2, that means... Okay, here's the thing. Like, this is one of those, if you're going to make a theory, you have to accept theories of similar logic. So, if we're saying this is an early model for something in movie 2, or a concept that will be expanded on in movie 2, could that not be Springtrap's animatronic for movie 2, you know? I just thought I'd bring that up. This has been another overanalyzing a MatPat video for an hour video. This was a good one until the end, until that last 30 seconds. I agree with the good... I do agree with the idea of Garrett Puppet. I just need... I want a theory that, like, feels like it explains what we're going with for that. Because I always want to know, like... I want to theorize around the idea that someone could write this out and think of this. You know, like... It doesn't feel like, oh, we're just making up concepts, or we're picking out, oh, there's a needle in scene 4, and in this one shot in Silver Eyes, Charlie picks up a needle, and therefore, it's the same scene. I don't like theorizing like that. Like, no one thinks that specific. Or most people don't think that specific, and FNAF typically isn't that specific, despite what people say about it. A lot of times when FNAF does connections, it's not a lot of times. There are several times when FNAF is very clear-cut with its connections that make me skeptical of random unused stuff being defining or whatever. I don't even know what the fuck I'm saying at this point. I don't like theorizing when there's no clear intent and, like, goal we're going towards. Like, I don't like theorizing when it's just connecting things to say, we found a way to connect these two things. That must mean this is factually how it works. Whatever. I'm rambling. Bye.